We are in a new series, a common misconception that people have outside the church is about people inside the church. Isn't that right? How many have friends outside the church, and when you talk about you going to church, they're kind of like, oh, you go to church. And that's the people inside are somehow like we're isolated and that we are unaffected by the real struggles of life. I would say a number of years ago, like 20 years ago, you would really see the church kind of dress a certain way, and we would always talk the part and we'd always look the part, and no one would know anything bad's going on in our lives because we wouldn't want anyone to think that we weren't a Christian. That was something that I experienced, I would say, growing up, that we were above the real world and we weren't aware of personal struggles. When I told people I went to church, they would say, oh, hey, Mr. Holy Roller. I remember that. I got out of Bible college, and my first job out of Bible college was working with Pico, and I was reading gas and electric meters. And they knew I graduated Bible college, so they're kind of like, here's Holy Roller. Hey, don't say those things when he's around. He doesn't like those things, you know? There are many times that the church people would seem to be on the outside above others, aloof to the real world. But even as I work in our community, I sometimes even get still at times now where they say, oh, shh, don't say that. The pastor's standing in the group. I love hanging out with our community. I forget that I'm a pastor. I just really see myself as Jay, and I'll be in the group, and they'll be joking around. They'll be like, oh, shh, the pastor's here. It is as if I'm bringing a notebook to all these meetings in my community to make sure that I'm writing down all the bad stuff you're saying. That's not happening. I'm a real person in a real world with real struggles. As we know today, we are not isolated from struggle, are we, church? We have struggles. We have problems. We have issues. We are affected by the real issues all the time. And for a believer, the gospel radically transforms the entire picture and the pursuit of our lives. And from that moment that we embrace Jesus, the gospel goes far beyond reforming our character traits and insulating us from these challenges. It transforms our hearts. As believers, our hearts are being renewed, transformed immediately, and now being renewed each and every day. Tell your neighbor, say, you're transformed. Not transformers, transformed. Let's get that straight, all right? Now, the misconception is birthed out of a lack of understanding of what is really going on in a Christian's world. Someone becomes a Christian, and we see in first... Yeah, a little quicker, just a little quicker. You got to keep me in a rhythm, all right? Because you get me out of rhythm, and it's all out of whack, all right? So we see that the people in first... you're so good, man. This is on video, too. It's going to be really good. And we see these people, they're living a Christian life in a very dark world. And as you dive in deep to Thessalonica, I think I might need help with that one, too. As I dig deep in there, you start really looking at our community, our society in many ways. It's very, very interesting. But when they were giving their lives to the Lord, there was people in Thessalonica that were really put off by this whole Christian thing that was going on. The transformation of their friends was shocking. Just like losing a football game with 10 seconds left when you thought you were going to win. And I have a picture of this kid right here from the University of Michigan. I remember this game was years ago, Michigan State. It's 10 seconds left. All you got to do is kick the ball. That's it. And then he shanked it, and then he got a touchdown. And that kid's face, man, it was a great meme. By the way, if you're shocked about anything, find that face and just send it to your friends. Shocking. I did not think we were going to lose. I didn't think you would turn your back on our culture and our society to be a Christian. Shocking. The reaction was like someone who says something stupid. It's like making a wrong answer on Jeopardy, which is really perplexing. Watch this. Who is this handsome gentleman? Pointing to yourself. I mean, this is Final Jeopardy, bro. Like, at least take a stab at it. What are you doing? That's perplexing. It is like losing a friend to a mysterious dark side of the Force that makes you angry, as we would see with Anakin. I mean, you knew it was going to happen, but when it happened, it was like, why are you going to the dark side, man? You're a Jedi. How dare you turn your back? I mean, people in that society got real mad. The Jews were so upset at these new believers that they were ready to go fisticuffs. They went to the dark side. would say, as we're living in our society today, then when people give our lives to the Lord and they are following Paul's message to Jesus, the reaction that people have today is similar to that, isn't it? It's shocking. It's perplexing. It is angering to me that you would become a Christian. I was in a chat room with a bunch of atheists. I thought it was really fun, actually. I would jump in, and I'd be the Christian in the room. I wasn't in there that long, just to let you know. They don't like me. I don't know why. I'm a nice guy. But in there, it was like being made fun of constantly about how stupid I am. I was laughing. It's quite funny. But there were some people really angry. On the second missionary journey, he and Silas came upon this place called Thessalonica. When I say first, it's, and when I say came upon, we're getting really confusing. We're going to stop there. Acts chapter 17, we will see Acts 17, 1 through 6. Well, how did this church get formed? And I'm going to go into the details of how dark this place was. But how did this church get formed? When Paul and his companions had passed through these other places, I'm having a hard time, all right, so give me a break. And they came upon Thessalonica, where there was a Jewish synagogue. As was his custom, Paul went into the synagogue, and on the Sabbath days, he reasoned with them from the scriptures. Verse number 3, explaining and proving that the Messiah had to suffer and rise from the dead. This Jesus I am proclaiming to you is the Messiah, he said. Some of the Jews were persuaded and joined Paul and Silas. It was great. It was a big conversion day. And did a large number of God-fearing Greeks and quite a few prominent women. But other Jews were jealous. So they rounded up some bad characters from the marketplace, formed a mob, and started a riot in the city. It seems like wherever Paul went, he really got people under people's skin. He did a good job of that. They rushed to Jason's house. This is not mine. I just want to make sure you know, so it's not confusing. I want to make sure be clarity here. It's not my house, all right? In search of Paul and Silas in order to bring them out to the crowd. But when they did not find them, they dragged Jason and some other believers before the city officials, shouting, "These men who have caused trouble all over the world have now come here." As a matter of fact, there's one statement the mob makes in Acts where he says, they turned the world upside down. It's amazing. Some scholars believe that Paul was there in this place called Thessalonica for 3 weeks. Some people might put it at 2 months, but the general thing is 3 weeks. How in the world can you see change happen in 3 weeks? Such a change that is so upsetting to the Jews and even to the Gentiles. How in the world can it happen but a revolutionary work of Christ that is happening in the lives of these people? 3 weeks. And then Paul created a storm pretty quickly. So let's get into Thessalonica for a minute, because I get in the context, and we're in this new series. I want to set up some of the context of what this city looked like. Thessalonica was about 200,000 people and considered somewhat a hub in the Roman Empire. Today, it's Thessaloniki, and it is actually the second largest city in Greece. They're a part of the Roman Empire, but their thinking was definitely Greek, located in the country of modern-day Greece. Just to give you a picture of where this is located, you will see it's right up there with that red line underneath it. It's a port city, a major city that was actually on a path of trade route. And you would see that this was a prosperous city as well. Very similar to an Ephesus or a Galatia, these different cities that were very, very big in the life of that time and age. With its nearness to the sea, there's an intersection of important trade routes. Paul would have been rubbing shoulders, mind you, in this community. He's rubbing shoulders with the business leaders and the politicians and every leading person. That city had 200,000 people residents, but you would also have thousands of people who are passing through each and every day. New York City and Manhattan, at one time, this is an old data statistic, so I don't know what it is today, but at one time, they say on Manhattan, there was 1.5 million people who lived there during the day, and 1.5 million people who actually got there through transit subway to work each and every day. You would say half the island has a bunch of people who are coming in and out of there just to work. It was that kind of busyness of a hub. Rome built the Ignatian Way, and we'll see what the Ignatian Way looks like, or where we go on this next image here. The Ignatian Way. Okay, this was part of the tunnel system that led to it. Since Thessaloniki is so populated today, there's not much ruins. They do dig up every now and then. I think they're digging a bus station and they end up finding this. And you would see that there was an Ignatian Way trade route that stretched all the way to Constantinople. So you'll see the route in this next map where it basically stretched from a coast all the way to the coast, and you'll see how it stops at Thessalonica. It was actually a major spot on a route where we're constantly receiving people coming in and coming out. And the people of Thessalonica were very religious people. Like many cities in the ancient world, they lacked no desire. How do I say this? They didn't lack in gods. They had lots of them. Dionysus, Aphrodite, Zeus, even as a god. Of course, being in the Greek culture, you would see that. And in short, most everyone in Thessalonica was an idol or emperor worshiper, and their religion was actually woven through all aspects of life, whether political, economic, or personal. It was all one bucket. It actually permeated all things. Their worship of the gods, the way in which they lived their lives, which was a Greco-Roman kind of environment, it was all a part of every single aspect. Let me go on. They viewed their relationship with the gods as making a deal. So when they worshiped gods, they would do something for the god, and their god in return would do something for them. They would do something for the god. I've heard many people pray, "Oh, dear God, if you do this, I will do that." How many have ever heard someone do that? No, I hope. Two honest people in the room. Thank you so much. You guys went from doing really good to not doing really good right now. I've heard people say, how many people actually pray at sporting events as if God really cares what's going on in the football game? I want you to know, I have a football team. It's my favorite football team. But I'm not there praying like, "Oh, dear God, I hope he gets a touchdown." Like, God's up there. I don't think God really cares about the touchdown. Someone said, "Well, God cares about all things." I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, you want to get in that battle? Let's save it for another time." But come on, they were praying, and they would say, "Well, if this God is real, and I'm going to pray to you, and I'll keep praying to you, and I'll worship you all my life if you do this for me." They are bartering with the gods constantly. And there's a god, Cabrius. This next image really kind of shows it. He's in the list of the gods. They had Roman benefactors, Greek Olympians, Egyptian gods, Jewish synagogue. They had everything that was going on there. And you would see this Cabrius. I was curious on who that was, and kind of looking through that. It was a martyr god. This god was supposedly slain, and he was going to come back to deliver the Thessalonians from future powerlessness. But he never arrived. Now, Frank Granger, in The Moral Life of the Early Romans, I want to explain to you now. I'm kind of talking to you now about the religious side of life in Thessalonica. I also would know that today there is a certain religion that we have. Now we don't have, I shouldn't say we don't have it. I don't see a lot people who are Americans that are actually carrying around idols and worshiping gods. There is some that do that. But I would say as a whole in our culture, we don't do that. Matter of fact, we don't call things outright a god. We're not looking and praying to Zeus or Aphrodite, but we do things that are worshipful in a religious kind of way. Let me explain. Culturally, we have the ways in which we have ideals in which we hold to. I have the freedom or the right to choose who and where. Like we have these freedoms, right? I have the freedom or right to be able to do this. I have the freedom right to be able to do that. We actually put all these things together, and we actually worship that fact. As a matter of fact, try to take someone's freedom away and watch them flip out, right? Why? Because for me, that God of freedom is the God of freedom in which I worship and which I serve. So, though, one example kind of helping illustrate the fact that we actually have worship issues still to this day. They don't look exactly like then, but they do translate into the here and now. Let me set up the culture when it comes to what the Greco-Roman period looked like. Now, in Frank Granger's book, In the Moral Life of the Early Romans, he discusses the growth of the degeneracy of the culture itself. He says, now this is at this time in the culture in which we find ourselves in this book. He says it started when manners broke down and it led to the hunt for pleasures. People became wasteful with their money. Things that were repugnant and evil started to gain dignity and honor. Politicians started to assassinate each other. The value of human life was reduced. Cruel slavery increased, and murder became accepted. With the advent of riches and military dominance, the morals of the Roman kingdom steadily shifted to more of an orgastic lifestyle by throwing off sexual restraint, lewd character, and or behavior was widely accepted. All manner of sex and anyone with anyone was common, and prostitution was legal. Slaves were their master's property economically and sexually. They had permissive and promiscuous lifestyles like the gods they worshiped. Wives were changed regularly. Mistresses were common. Chastity was unheard of. Did you get a picture of what's going on here? And then you come in with this gospel of Christ that flies in the face of not only the gods in which you worship, but in the manner in which you live your life. And we would say that there's some similarity to today, that when we're talking about a lifestyle that is serving and loving Christ, or actually a follower of Jesus, if you're truly a follower of Jesus, it flies in the face of all the ideals in which we hold to, our idols, and it flies in the face of how in which we live our lives. And we would see that there is an actual parallel. Paul is essentially run out of town. He makes his way around. As a matter of fact, in Acts chapter 17, it talks about how he starts this church in Thessalonica. And next one. And then he goes to Berea, which he had a really short stint there because Paul's a troublemaker. And then he goes to Athens, and he isn't there too long either in Athens. And then he goes to Corinth, and he resides in Corinth, and he starts to pen the letter to this new church that started in such a short period of time that he was really concerned about it. So 2 points this morning I want to deliver to you. When it comes to our faith, and the faith in which we see those who start to follow after Christ in Thessalonica, we see that there's a cost.